they were taking a break.
Sorry.
No problem. They were taking a break from the filming, and I felt, well, how they're robbing me of commemorating this incredible woman's story. I'm going to do it myself. I had a friend who had a camera. I took the camera. I flew to Philadelphia, where my grandmother was in an old age home at the time, and I sat with her for 3 days straight to hear her stories. And I think I brought stuff out that she hadn't really talked about in years. It was very healing for her, very healing for me. And then in being inspired to create this documentary, you'll meet her on camera as well. She passed away this past March. And every time I see her on film, it's like I'm getting to see her again, and it's so powerful. And I'm so excited to share her with you. She gives really potent wisdom. Particularly, this is not a Holocaust piece per se, but the idea of intermarriage within the Jewish experience to some has been likened to a Holocaust. Many feel that because so many Jews have no Jewish identity and are marrying out of the Jewish tradition, that we're losing Jews. And wanting to inject a lot of positivity into the world, and especially now, but just in general, I don't feel that's the way. I am hopeful, and I don't think that we're going to lose, or we're losing people, despite what the numbers show. And this movie has been used as an educational tool and a really connective tissue for the Jewish community to inspire around Jewish literacy and Jewish identity. I think that's really the cure. So many of us have become so disengaged. The numbers are pretty staggering. 72% of North American Jews have no connection to their Jewish identity. That's jarring. Especially during a time like this where we need that. We need a connection to our identity. So I'm excited to be sharing this film with you. We've been screening it over the last 2 years in small groups, to schools, through festivals, and all sorts of programming. We just came back from a tour in Israel. I hope that, we'll be in a little bit more conversation before you watch it, but I hope you feel free to connect with me after if you feel like this could be a tool in any way to support the work that you're doing, or the community that you live in, or anyone that you know that could use a little boost of inspiration to really understand where we come from as a people, our impact, why we're here, and the future moving forward, how we can be a part of that in carving out our unique Jewish identity, each and every single one of us, because it's just so important that we do that, especially right now. So that was a long answer to a pretty simple question. I could have just said, my grandmother's a Holocaust survivor, and I'm very proud.
You appreciate the stories. Adding your email or your contact information to the chat would be helpful to bring our inclusive audience close to you. I have there's a lot of people in our audience, and we are recording this, and so many more people will see the recording. There are a lot of authors in our audience. There's a lot of wannabe authors. There's a lot of filmmakers and wannabe filmmakers. And one of the questions that I have to you is, give us a little sense of how hard it was for you to produce this movie, and what particular lessons learned that you can share with our audience that maybe can shortcut their process a little bit.
So, there's a lot of information out there on what the creative journey looks like, or like if you have an idea how you can create a beat sheet or a mood board or a pitch deck and send it around and get all of that I can speak to as well. But I think the hardest part for me was having the idea and then saying, this is an idea I actually want to bring into fruition. And I'll tell you what I mean. There's an author, Elizabeth Gilbert, who's incredible. She wrote a book called Big Magic, and she talks about ideas that live in potential state, and they're just looking for host bodies. And I felt like at the moment that I had the idea to make this documentary, I really did feel, I remember where I was sitting in my car. I was sort of frustrated with where my career, my personal and spiritual life was going. I felt like I was meant to do more in the world. And then this idea sort of trickled into my brain, like we know how that is. And I was just really attuned to it. I was like, oh, that's a new idea. I kind of never had that idea before, to make a documentary. I come from the scripted world. I write words that are said exactly like they're written on the page, and unscripted is you can't control it as much. But this is interesting. And then I acted on it. I think that the bridge between idea to saying, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do this, no matter how hard it is or unclear the path to the final, success is I'm going to do it because I'm feeling called. And like, this is a big part of where my purpose meets my passion. And I'm glad I acted on this because I had no previous background in documentary filmmaking. I'd never made a feature-length film before, something over, 5 minutes long. It was a lot. So I think the biggest hurdle that most of us have is I have an idea. Let me sleep on it for 20, 30, 40 years because it just feels so insurmountable. But there's a real power to committing and saying, I'm going to do this. I don't know, I'm going to figure it out, but I'm feeling called and I know that I have it within me if the desire and the will is there. And so at that point, once I got over the hurdle and I felt really empowered, like I must have been chosen to tell this story. No one else could tell it like me. I'm going to have a little bit of hubris. Like, let me get this together. I called a mentor. I told him the idea. I gut checked it a little bit. And I think that's where mentorship and camaraderie and community, right? And that's why I make myself available to just check before I invest my time and money into creating something. Like, is this something that the world should see, could see, would want to see? Is this viable? Is it worth my investment in time? Can I find ways to workshop a better path forward? And then once I got a couple of yeses, you should do this, I made the trailer. The trailer you saw is probably the 7th iteration of the trailer, but I wanted to put something down. I knew people needed to see something. I couldn't just say, I'm bumped by my sister's intermarriage, and so I'm going to make a movie about figuring out why marry Jewish, because it's never been made from the Jewish experience. And I think there are probably other Jews and other non-Jews that are like struggling with intermarriage and what it means to marry outside of your faith, and that sort of tug between like loyalty to family and loyalty to culture, but also like love and what that means. So I wanted to put it together and show it visually. And I did that out of my own pocket. I got some favors and made that. And once I had something tangible, for an author, sometimes it's a treatment. For many TV shows, it's a Bible or some sort of pitch deck where people can start to really see the idea. People want to get on a moving train. So as soon as I had this piece and they heard me speak with the passion and I had a vision for why this was important and how I was going to make it happen, slowly but surely I got support. People reach out that wanted to be a part of it, to interview, to connect me to interviewees, to donate. I fundraised 2 rounds of $15,000 each, which was significant and is significant now. It's really not a lot or enough to make a movie, but it somehow got me there. And yeah, 7 years later, I'm on the other side, having shown this for the last 2 years, but it took a long time because I was piecemealing it and funding it myself and making it happen. And as you'll see in just a few minutes when we start, I went through a real journey in the film. So I couldn't rush that. It was unscripted. I wanted to be honest to what I was going through. So a lot of what took so long was me just being in the film, like being in the journey that I was documenting. And then of course we had 150 hours of footage at the end, whole other crazy nightmare of 150 hours. I need to make a 1 hour film.
You're just literally tripping into my next question is how possibly did you edit yourself?
No clue. It was extremely difficult. Again, partnership. I have an incredible team. We had many existential crises while editing it. It was a whole, self-development journey just to edit the film. We made, again, 7 iterations. It's like sculpting. You sort of, you put it together, you get some opinions, but not too many because everyone's got one. So you got to be really precious with who you get opinions from, especially the creative process. And eventually the movie started to come together. And I think, like I said, the beginning's really hard when you say, I have an idea, I'm going to do it. And then the end's really hard to say, that's it. Like the painting's done, I'm putting the brush down. Or you know what? That's the last period and the last copy edit I'm going to do with this book, because it's not going to be perfect, but it's perfect. And it speaks perfectly to who I am and how I want it to be in this moment. I can speak to every decision I've made and I'm done. And that was also really hard to do, but I did it. And then we birthed it into the world. And thank God I'm excited to share it with you. It's been inspiring people.
Just the last question. I want to make sure everyone understands a little bit about you. I was a little confused when I first started. Obviously, you're Orthodox, correct?
On the other side of this journey, I would say if I have to tick a box, because there's boxes now, I would say, yeah, I keep Shabbat, I keep kosher. I didn't start out that way. You'll see the live journey. But yes, I presently am an observant Jew.
And the person that you speak about, the interface marriage, is your sister.
Sister.
Okay, you want to clarify that. So,
Yeah.
okay, we're ready to go. And I want to just let you know this is an hour. We're going to stream it live for the hour. Just to give you a little bit of my background, I've been doing film groups like this now for 5 years. I started in San Diego and created the San Diego second generations of the Shoah Movie Club at the beginning, well, actually right before COVID. And bringing people like Becky to this event is something really, really special. And bringing it to the world through Zoom is something we couldn't have done before COVID, really. So it really is a unique event. And I really am thankful that you're here, Becky. I know you're going to give us lots of answers in the Q&A, and you'll have a great group of people asking questions. So I'm again going to share the screen. We'll start the film right now.
I'm so stoked to introduce this woman. She is a dear friend of mine, a lovely and talented human being, Israeli born, Philly bred. She's a writer, she's an actor, she's a documentarian. She's been on ABC's Mixology, and my favorite of all of her performances, you can see her on a national J-Day commercial.
My Bubby, she used to put seltzer in the matzo balls.
Yeah? Oh, well, that's your Bubby. This is my Bubby recipe. Ladies and gentlemen, Becky Tahel Bordeaux. I somehow found myself standing before this complex debate. On one side stands the inclusiveness of love conquers all, marry whoever you want. And somewhere across the spectrum of anything but black and white controversy about intermarriage is the deep-seated fear of the disappearance of the Jewish people, which scares the shit out of me. So 18 days after I turned 30, my baby sister, who I love, gets married to a non-Jew. You know, that's a big deal for our family, being, you know, our bloodline goes back as the oldest Jews go. And there's no one in my family that's intermarried. And so this being the first person kind of splits the family wide open in so many ways.
The Jewish world is in a state of code red, urgent, critical crisis.
We're losing people. I mean, we're hemorrhaging.
Intermarriage is a time bomb. We're so small that blending effectively means disappearing.
This is about the survival of our entire people.
There are no easy answers in this. This is existential and huge.
I was born in Israel. We were raised with gas masks and bomb shelters. And I think for me, there was like no other reality, really. The Persian Gulf War, an overbearing smell of gas mask, and my 3-year-old baby sister scratching to get out of that bubble-shaped thing that would keep the noxious gases out of her lungs should chemical warfare strike. We moved when I was 7. We relocated to my aunt's basement. Instantly for me, it was about how do I become American and fit in? And I think that's definitely like the through line of my life. Back then, at the age of 7, 8, 9, I was learning a new language and having an accent for a few years, and all of that I've completely blacked out. I remember none of it. When we first moved, this was really like my first bit of schooling. This was first grade. I didn't even speak English, really. And I remember the teacher pulling me up in front of the class and it sounding like Charlie Brown. It was like, wah, wah, wah. Although I do remember my mom telling me that she couldn't afford to send me to the private Jewish school where she was teaching anymore. So I was going to go to public school. And at that point I said, oh, so these kids are not going to know how to pronounce my Hebrew name, which is Tahel. I was already made fun of for it. So I asked my mother to change my name to Becky. It just felt like a really down-to-earth girl that people could get to know. So I went with Becky and she said, yeah. My mom was always the black sheep of the family. And she's one of 7. Is it? Yeah. She was raised completely Orthodox in Jerusalem, where she was born, and then moved to Haifa, and that's where we came into the story. You didn't really raise us very religious. Why? How was that?
Not religious, because I didn't like religion.
Why?
I'm truly, because I don't want anybody to give me structures. I know what, basically you need to be good. I don't give credit to someone who has a yarmulke on his head or the one who eats certain meat to be a good one. Don't tell me how to be a good person. I know.
My family had grown less observant, no longer keeping kosher. Assimilation trumped preservation. I mean, yeah, she still raised us culturally very Jewish, but that's when I started to learn that there was a difference between being religious and this new thing of being a cultural Jew, which was what I considered myself growing up. I think one of the more confusing things for me is being asked if I have to marry someone Jewish, because I never had a clear answer. You know, growing up, my mother said, marry who you love. And, you know, maybe that was because for her, her first marriage to my father didn't work out. And she didn't want to give me some kind of definition of love that she hadn't yet arrived at. How do I go to Gal and tell her it's kosher or not to marry a non-Jew?
No, but it's not exactly, it's her choice too. For me, as a mother, I want to support her. And I think I said enough to her, to the point where she said, that's my decision. I made up my mind. So what else can you say?
I don't know that she's completely thought it out. Like that she really knows.
Thought it out.
She was scared. Like when I told her that I was going to come to Grenada and ask her these questions, she was like, look, I don't have all the answers.
Wow, you know what? That's a good idea for her.
To ask her the real questions. Like now's the time. There's 6 months left.
Yes.
Beautiful. Welcome to Grenada. You guys are so wonderful. It's so nice to be able to share this.
Live your life to the full, and you will not regret every fall that we did is a lesson for the future.
I was always very protective of you. I was afraid you wouldn't make the right decision. I think there was a part of me that was like, well, I'm the older sister and I always had to lead the ship, right? How did you know that Justin was it then?
You just feel it, really. You know, from the moment I met him, there was something there. Almost 8 years later, he pushes me, he lets me grow, he gives me space, he loves me, he coddles me. You know, it's like this balance. It's everything. He gives me everything.
And what Gal is doing, she's cutting this chain. And she's doing it after thousands of years of her family being Jewish.
It's my heart, you know, and my life, and I have to do what I have to do. What I know is right. Is it for sure the perfect right thing to do? I don't know, but isn't that life?
Her decision is like jumping into a road with the cars. She might come alive, but with the broken feet, on a good case.
Our differences never were an issue. You know, we're completely different. I'm a musician. She's going to be a doctor. She's Jewish. I'm not. Those things, like, you know, just when we met, we just had a very, very kindred connection. And when I started dating Gal, like when I talked about who she was and you know, mentioning that she's Jewish, I remember hearing from a few people like, oh, she'll never marry you, and things like that, honestly. And that literally was my first concept of that. Like the first time I'd ever even heard of that. I'm just loosely Christian, and my religion is very much based in spirituality, based in nature and music and friendship and love. I have no interest in converting because I think that part of what makes Gal and I a really cool, neat couple is that we're very different. Anybody should feel lucky to have a partner that inspires them. Gal certainly inspires me every day.
There's plenty nice people today in the world, non-Jewish. But you have to know that you're Jewish and you have to be separate.
I believe in a lot of things that aren't Jewish 100%, but I am Jewish and I have my traditions and I know the stories and I love all our biblical stories and what they mean and so on and so forth. But there's more, you know, to me, it's all leading to the same place. Every religion has the different stories, different ways, and no one's right and no one's wrong. These are just our paths to follow. It's not like I'm going to marry a non-Jew and just abandon all of these things. Those things are very, very important to me.
How much have they been important in like your relationship to date?
He loves family. He loves warmth. That's what we come from. Good food, family, and warmth. A little bit of drama. We figure it out. We dance, we sing, we eat.
Yeah, and we drink.
And we drink. Cheers.
All right. Well,
And why are we different? You take oil and you put it into water. What's going to happen?
separate.
Why?
Is it not the same elements?
That's the answer. We're simply not the same.
Interesting, but also you can emulsify them. You know, salad dressing, usually if it sits in the fridge, it separates it. But before you use it, right, you shake it really hard and you emulsify it, and it is mixed. So to me, it's finding the beauty in that mixture, because sure, you can see the separation in it, but you could also see similarities in it. How do you feel about it?
I don't know. I don't know. I think I'm only slightly more confused than when I came.
Only slightly.
Only
Okay,
slightly. But that's
good.
okay. I have time.
You wander the land over dear and far, we glow in the night with flaming stars. From far the night to where we are. I can't read about the we know our dreams for tomorrow. Every other way for a beautiful day.
ב-1941 התחילה המלחמה. ובזמן המלחמה אני הייתי במחנות של הגרמנים. אני לא אספר מה שהיה שם, כולם יודעים כבר, ואני סיפרתי לך מה היה שם, איזה זוועה, זה השואה, עברתי את השואה. יצאנו לשואה 60 איש ממשפחה, אמא שלי ואבא שלי, וחזרנו 9 איש. אם גל לא הייתה מתחתנת עם ג'סטן, לא הייתי חושבת על זה. וכל הזמן זה הפריע לי והפריע לי והפריע לי, כי אני שאלתי את גל, יהיו ילדים. איך זה? והיא אמרה, אנחנו נחנך אותם בחינוך יהודי. מה זה עכשיו חינוך יהודי? הן יהודיות. עברתם בת מצוות, זה היה מאוד יפה ומאוד טוב.
My bat mitzvah was a beautiful comma in the run-on sentence that was becoming my fight to survive. I never felt so whole as I did that August day up on the bima with my family. That was actually the last time we all stood so peacefully together at 9. My parents divorced. My bat mitzvah allowed us to unite for something bigger.
Hello.
Oh my God.
How are you?
So good to see you. It's been forever. Oh my gosh. So yeah, let's go into where the magic happened.
Right.
For me.
Right here for you, your bat mitzvah.
You haven't been here.
We redid it since you've been here.
Really? We used to sit right here somewhere. I always like the sign.
Right.
Am I allowed to step up here?
Go ahead.
Picture of us. My hair was shorter.
Standing right there. All the memories come flooding back.
You really do. I'm 6 months shy of my 30th birthday. Can you believe it? I know. So that's
Wow.
a real like moment of identity and like what is going on and what do I believe in and how do I support my sister in what I will tell you is going on in her life. So let's do it.
We have to look at the critical mass of Jews in this country and wonder how many more generations we have.
When you look at all marriages going back to 1960, I believe, only between 12 and 14% are interfaith marriages. But if you started in 2010, 40% of marriages are interfaith. So clearly something is happening.
Jewish survival for centuries has been about Jewish people making family together, making Jewish babies, in which we've continued to survive. So that very core feeling around, but this is how it needs to be in order for Jewish people to survive, is real, and it's on a gut level.
The children of intermarriage are more likely to be non-Jewish, given everything we know about ethnicity, everything we know about religion, everything we know about being Jewish up to this point. We have to view intermarriage as diminishing the numbers of engaged Jews.
Do you think I need to marry a Jew? Honestly, think about it though.
I think if
Supports
you
me.
hit it off with somebody and you were like, I love this person, they're my best friend, I want to spend the rest of my life with them. They're my sun, moon, and stars. Doesn't matter if they're Jewish or not. If you feel such a kinship with somebody, you gotta bone down.
I would say it's best for you and your soul to marry someone that you love and that respects you and that you can form complete partnership with. Yeah. I don't think it's ideal to marry someone from your same religious background. It might make things easier, but listen, my husband and I have very different religious backgrounds, but we're both Jewish.
How can so many smart people have so many smart opinions that are completely different from one another?
There are 2 billion Christians in the world. There are 1.7 billion Muslims in the world. So if our kids become neither Christian nor Muslim, it doesn't make a dent. There are about 12 million Jews in the world. So it does make a dent.
Most people marry like. And the reason they do is for the same reason that most people's friends are alike, because there's an automatic understanding that you don't have with people who aren't like you.
I think the kind of struggle that you're having is great and very Jewish. And I think what you need to know is you're not going to find any easy answers.
With all of this new spirituality stuff swirling in my head, all I could think about was, are Gall and Justin talking about these things? Like, have they sat down and had these conversations? I approached my sister and she said something along the lines of sorta, which wasn't good enough for me. So I brought in a rabbi to mediate this interfaith premarital conversation to make sure that they really had asked themselves and each other the tough questions.
I'm Gall.
Hi, Gall. It's great to meet you.
Likewise.
Is that you or somewhere else?
It's great to meet you.
Yeah, you
Well,
too.
so we're gonna get to know each
Ready
other
to
a little
chat?
bit today. Yeah.
Awesome.
You wanna
So
come in
excited.
and we'll
Let's do it.
spend some
Let's get started.
What is important to you? What's important to you about your religious upbringing that you would really like to pass on to your children?
I celebrate holidays. I mean, it's very important to me. I consider myself Jewish. I want to raise my kids Jewish, but certainly not religious.
From the very beginning, we've been on the same page. Like I've always kind of known that, you know, the Jewish follows the mother bloodline. So I've always known that our kids will be raised Jewish, and I've always been completely on board with that. And she's always been completely on board with incorporating elements of my background.
Is there anything intrinsically Jewish about the home that you want your kids to live in, or the teachings that you want to give them?
Maybe. And when you celebrate Jewish holidays with me, I love it.
It's been pretty fun.
You know, it's like introducing your partner to the other side. And when they enjoy it, you're just, yay, it's going to work.
Have you talked to your family about baptizing your kids or raising kids with specific Christianity?
Yeah, my family knows that should we have kids, they will be Jewish, and they I mean, you know, whatever we do completely with whatever, they would never question or never any, you know, pressure about how to do things a certain way.
And have you talked to your family about the potential of having kids that will celebrate Christmas or Easter in some way?
I have.
And how do they
Yeah.
feel about it?
There's obviously a bit of a split always.
What was I expecting? That my sister would have this epiphany moment and say, thank you so much for showing me the light. I was about to make a huge mistake. Was I trying to break up my sister's wedding? Like, was that what I was doing? Her wedding was so beautiful and I cried so much. I remember my parents looking at me like, are you okay? And I wasn't okay. I was so emotional. In one sense, my sister was moving into this next chapter of her life. And in another sense, I suddenly realized that her fate and her decisions would never soothe my lack of inner peace. Like all the questions that I was asking her, I'd have to ask myself, and that I couldn't avoid thinking about my mom's side of the family, that
was so religious, and that my dad's side of the family that escaped the Holocaust, and that I'd had all of this anxiety growing up around calling myself Jewish and what that meant, and all this aversion I had to actually sitting down with like an Orthodox, by the book rabbi. Why was that so terrifying for me? What was I really afraid of?
The question isn't why intermarry or not intermarry. The question is, why on earth should I be Jewish? What does that mean? What difference does that make?
Judaism is not built like religion. It's built totally differently. It's built like a relationship. Everything that we understand about how relationships function, that's how Judaism is built.
That sounds intense. I just want to be a Jew that celebrates Hanukkah and like enjoys the cultural stuff and goes to summer camp and goes to Israel every so often. And I don't want to do all those other things. There's too many rules.
Good.
Am I not Jewish?
Oh, no, of course you're Jewish. Education is the beginning of connection. If we don't understand what Judaism is trying to do, then there's no way it can speak to us. It becomes OCD practices that we stand, we sit, we eat, we drink, and that can't overcome love. It can't, and it won't.
How do we know we still need these tools and all the prayers to connect to that kind of energy that might be accessible to us without the tool?
The answer is a classic remains a classic. And the Torah is the ultimate classic.
Is the relationship to Torah and whether it's divine kind of the differentiating factor between all other streams of Judaism?
Absolutely.
I guess I'm a little confused because I don't know how I feel about Torah. Like, is it God-given? Is it divine? And that feels like it's a huge roadblock right now in me continuing this project with interfaith marriage, because if I don't know how I feel about Torah and that determines whether it's kosher or not to intermarry, then I'm kind of stuck. Like, where do I go from here?
It's a brave question, because that question says, look, if this is divine, I may not love it. I may not be able to incorporate it right away, but at least I have the roadmap. I know what I'm punching into the GPS. If Torah is divine, then it's not whether it's relevant. My own relevancy comes into question. Am I relevant? If Torah is divine, if it's truth, and I'm not subscribed to truth, then I'm irrelevant. So that's what we have to figure out. Is Torah true?
Whoa, wasn't expecting that curveball. What do I do now? So I'm realizing that like we're going all over the place talking to a bunch of people, and their opinions are emanations of their relationship to Torah. And so of course I'm still like lost 2 years later because I don't know my relationship to Torah. This whole project is heading in a different direction. I need to turn right and ask myself a bunch of questions by learning about like, what is my truth? What is Jewish truth? The more I learn about this, the more I recognize that I know absolutely nothing about anything anymore. How do I start from step one? Like, how do I, as a Jew, educate myself about what Judaism is? Like, I need to treat myself like I'm converting. This is great, but it's still you telling me. I want to see it. Like, I want to see it in the text. I want to like be able to see this for myself and not just keep hearing opinions, which I feel like is what I've been doing.
Absolutely. So let's do the short version first. There's a book you can buy.
Write this down. Okay.
And the name of the book is called Permission to Receive.
Mommy, I've had a change of plans for the next year, and I'm feeling very called to go back to study more and to just learn the things that I didn't learn after my bat mitzvah, the stuff that I didn't feel was right for me at the time. And I've been offered to go to Israel to study and to film there and to kind of, go back to my roots and figure out what's important to me and what I believe is Jewish truth. Oh my God, that's amazing. Thank you. I'm excited too. I'm kind of scared. I was like, I don't want to be converted. I don't know what I think. And then I was like, you know what? You do know. You just go in and you be open and you learn and you just fight for your truth and ask the big questions, For sure. No one can brainwash you or force you to do anything. Okay, copy that. I'm really excited to keep checking in with you and kind of updating you on this journey, I'm forever indebted. Thank you so much for your time.
I'm much more excited about your journey than the movie.
Tahel Bordeaux, second grade. I wrote all about Israel. Israel is about as big as the city of Philadelphia. Israel is a very small place, and the people in Israel know each other because the state of Israel is small and everyone lives next to each other. There are a lot of enemies, and there's not always peace. It is a little crowded. Lots of families live in Israel, and that's why it's crowded. Israel has trees and flowers. People are nice. There are candy shops and more. In Israel, there are nice toys and playgrounds. I'm lucky to live in Israel because lots of miracles happened. It's the one place that Jews can be free, and we feel like it's our home. Oh my goodness, you guys, I have no wardrobe that looks anything like these guys. In a moment's notice, everything I thought was so important became the complete opposite. I put Hollywood on hold and booked a 4-month sabbatical, enrolling in a women's Orthodox seminary to hopefully find the answers to all my burning questions. No voice left. Here, be Missy, bye. Starting to kick in that I'm actually in Jerusalem. Yeah, like I'm not going home and back to work in a week or two. Like this is actually, this is my life. Like weird plumbing and crappy cafeteria food and a bunch of young men and women on spiritual journeys and constant study and reading and researching and meeting and missing buses and making wrong buses and getting detoured around a beautiful bridge. I feel like there's a bit of inner resistance to letting go of like who I think I am and making space for who I'm supposed to be and not being completely sure where one ends and the other begins. I think a part of me really wants to change my life and that I don't want to keep living life the way I've been living it. It's not been to my ultimate potential. So I know something's got to change. What exactly has to change? I don't know, and I'm going to figure that out for myself, like moment by moment.
Why is it worth your while to be Jewish?
Totally the question.
Wow.
That I was
That's right. There's no other answer.
What is important about this?
Why do this?
That is going to be a huge question in your life because if it's meaningful and something of value, so that's going to lead you in one path of life. That's going to affect who you're going to marry. That's going to affect what your family is going to look like, what you value, what kind of values you bring into your home.
You can't know where you're going to as a Jew until you understand where you're coming from, not just biologically and historically, but what was the mission? What was passed down like a relay race? Every generation gets the baton and gets to run forward with it.
For a lot of people, Judaism and religion in general is just a bunch of noise. It doesn't correlate to any truth experientially. I hear why we think religion is dogma because it's presented as dogma, and religion is, rejected in our society for perhaps some good reasons. But you haven't ever sensed maybe there's something more. There's not a little curiosity in there. Are you not willing to allow yourself to be curious because you're afraid of consequence?
This is the first time in a long time that I'm focused on one thing, myself. Who am I? It's not easy and it doesn't come with a roadmap. So I've come up with my own self-made curriculum, my to-do list. I'm living in the dorms on Neve Yerushalayim's campus, which is an Orthodox seminary for young girls who are getting closer to their faith. And so everyone's dressed really modestly.
My all-time most popular question, can you guess what it is? Aren't you hot?
Yeah.
Which is a polite way of saying, why are you wearing so many clothes?
In Jewish law, you are supposed to cover the upper part of your chest and your arms and the upper part of your legs.
Judaism has a lot to say about this. The way that it looks at the woman's body is as a very precious and beautiful and private thing. But it is not where we get our value as people.
A lot of people say, okay, so if you have a hard time doing it because you want to follow the law, do it for the sake of the men. Like, it's so hard for men and they can't control their eyes and they can't control this.
Right.
And like, okay, fine, legit, I get it. But I also don't do it for that reason.
And you could just say, well, don't tell me anything about my clothing. We've already said Judaism is there to give you meaning and it's going to give you instruction. Whether you listen is a different question, but it's going to tell you how to get ultimate meaning. And clothing is a very important part of life. It's not going to have nothing to say about that.
I actually dress modestly for the sake of the women folk, because I feel like if we're all doing that, so what we're doing is we're creating a community where we really, really care about each other and each other's relationships. And we're creating a community where everyone feels like safe and comfortable just to exist and be present.
When God tells us to dress modestly, if we were just our bodies, then it would be an oppressive commandment because we were covering ourselves up. But what we understand is ourself is not our body. And therefore, by covering the body, we are releasing ourself.
So here goes. I'm going to cover my shoulders and my elbows. Promise. In LA, as an actor, there's no real community for modesty. It just doesn't exist. So I had to take myself out of that environment to experience it. There's no other playground for that. I went shopping, Rabbi.
Did you make a Shechianu blessing?
No.
You make there's a Jewish blessing that you make on when you get a new certain things. One thing is an article of clothing. So should we do it? You ready?
Let's do it.
Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam shehachianu v'kiyamanu v'higiyanu lezman hazeh.
I question every morning if I'm feeling this way because I'm just in the environment, or if I'm feeling this way because, well, really, truly, this is my truth.
The truth.
The truth.
The truth. Science. Yeah.
I'm tasting the buffet of Israeli culture, and I'm tasting the buffet of the different streams of Judaism in Jerusalem, from the ultra-Orthodox to the slightly less ultra-Orthodox, to the modern Orthodox, to the non-denominationally Orthodox, to the yeshivish, whatever Orthodox, to the Hasidish, to the secular, non-practicing, to the somewhat practicing secular. There's like so many people and so many different ways to live life. And I know that like that is part of the master plan. Like, I get that we're not supposed to all be the same. But that trips me up a little bit.
You don't automatically know that there's a creator. God did it that way on purpose to set up one of our main assignments in the world, and that is to discover and to understand that we actually came from something beyond ourselves called the creator, even though we can't see or feel the creator.
This very second, we are channeling the presence of a higher power. But a lot of the Jews I've met have very distorted and very disempowering understandings of Hashem, of God. We long to belong to that which is greater than ourselves.
God created the world and he put human beings here and he gave them something called free will, which means that any given day you can serve him or you cannot serve him. It's totally your call. A lightning bolt's not going to come down and strike you down if you do something wrong.
Most people's image of God is a particular being somewhere over there. He's someone in heaven, and that someone in heaven created me, someone on earth. And me, someone on earth, has been commanded to serve him. And sounds kind of like slavery, quite frankly. It's very disempowering and seems very diminishing. All that's got to be deleted.
So what happens if you're an atheist? It's completely out of the equation.
An atheist, at least, is someone who's taking a stand. They're trying to think. So I think there is a chance that they can grow, as opposed to someone that just never really thinks about God. So at least it's somewhere in there.
I think the very fact that we are all in search of significant self is itself a religious journey. Because if you really, really, really believe there's no God and you really, really believe this is all an accident, then you should really, really believe that you are not significant because this is coming from nowhere and this is going nowhere.
I actually like to pray, but I never felt like I knew how to. I felt like I didn't have like a practical understanding. So then it was just easy to throw it all away because I wasn't really like deeply connected to it.
Prayer is such a privilege and it's become such a burden because we don't know how to do it well. It's not fun reading, in a different language, things that make no sense to you and feel that you have to do it and breaking your teeth over it. But it is tremendous pleasure to have a conversation with God. Bring into reality my relationship with my creator. And I always tell people when they say to me, like, how do I start my prayer journey? I just say, please and thank you. If you need something, ask. And if you got something, say thank you. That's it. That's how you start your prayer journey. It's almost enough.
Why does it matter the specific words that I'm saying? Who's to say that this is the actual number to dial God?
No, I don't think it is. I think it's understood in many traditions that you can talk in whatever language you want all the time. You know when you're supposed to pray, according to Jewish law? When you have a need. Do you know when that is?
All the time.
Exactly. So since we can't pray all the time because we have other things to do, so they reduced prayer to a mantra that you can sort of lose yourself in. That's what you have to make a decision. Okay.
Oh, those.
How many minutes do you want this to take you?
Okay.
It has to be an amount of time that is meaningful and manageable. For some people, that's 5. Some people, that's 2. Some people, that's 10. So what I try and do is I try and get focused in on like, what do I need today? And then I always find it reflected somewhere in the words because the words kind of cover all your bases. This is my time that I will dedicate to the quality of the rest of my day. And then what I would do is I would learn a little bit about what the different prayers give you.
I actually bought myself a prayer book, a siddur that has my name on it in Hebrew, which is exciting.
There are afternoon prayers, there are evening prayers. You don't have to do more than you can handle or want to handle. It's just really there to not forget to bring God into your life. It's a formula. So once I have a formula in prayer, so I can lose myself in it. If it becomes so focused on the formula that you forget what the formula is there to achieve, that's a mistake. And if it becomes so focused on your own formula that you forget the original formula, then that's also missing something. It's a hand-in-hand combination. And the thing that you do to get the gift of concentration and focus is you say to God, I'm coming in at this and I'm ready. Ready means I've switched off mentally, technologically, emotionally, wherever I was before. I'm completely in this space now.
I haven't prayed like I have been for the last 2 weeks in years. So that's new. And it could feel like it's put on. Like, am I doing this because I'm Jerusalem? Am I doing this because I'm just in this environment that really like nurtures and fosters this? Or have I been seeking it and now it's being created and cemented in a way that's going to be meaningful for me then going back?
There's a million ways to give thanks for a cup of coffee, okay? But when I say a bracha in my ancient wisdom language, like I have all my ancestors, like I say the same bracha that my great Bubby said, So you can sort of only get that from your own wisdom tradition.
Al tira Israel, al tira, lo ata, be'aryei mishak, mi lo ira, Am Israel chai.
I'm in class Sunday through Wednesday all day. And I'm learning like the portion of the week, but like text, like we're looking at text, we're breaking apart the words, we're getting, there's like different layers, right? From the most simple to the Kabbalistic interpretations of everything. There's no way to remove darkness from the universe without Torah. There's no way for us to do this without religion. Let's say we can't intuit best practices.
It's a really great question. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam are in many ways radically different religions, but all of them have fundamental things in common, have not come up through any other paths in history, and they all explicitly came from Torah.
Torah, for the Jewish people, is the fuel and the guidance system.
The infinite creator's book of meaning and morality for all of humanity.
Jews are the hardware. Torah, that's the software. The two of them together is a great combination. Jews without the Torah are just driven over accomplished people who often do the worst things, like the biggest stock market scandals. They organize crime.
If you're learning Jewish
Torah or mysticism and it's boring, so you don't get it because, or you haven't had the right teacher, you don't have access to the right book because it's like mind-blowingly deep.
Anything that we do is about getting us close to God, right? Any of the different laws or any of the different customs that we have. Everyone's looking for the why, but people get bothered by the rules. Meaning like, I would love to just connect with God. I'd love to be spiritual, but like, why do you have to tell me what to do?
Like all practice, whether it's a diet or yoga or religion, like there's sacrifice.
You can understand like halachic practice as a burden and an obligation, and that's totally how I experienced it. Or you can understand it as a structure and a framework that creates discipline and that ultimately creates a lot of expansive space.
It's ironic in sports. People, the biggest arguments and fights are over, was his foot like a millimeter out or a millimeter in? Right. But in Judaism, when we try to have that conversation, I don't like the way you're doing this. You know, it's not right. There shouldn't be rules. Let me go back to my football game where I'm going to scream at the guy next to me over, you know.
What is that about?
Because we're not as passionate about religion as we are about football. If we were as passionate about Judaism as we are about money, as we are about sports, as we are about materialism, all the great things in the world, right? If we were as passionate about Judaism, then we'd be okay with it. We're not as sold. It's cute. It's pretty. It's nice. And I have a bar mitzvah, so I want to do a nice party. And, you know, I'm getting a wedding. It's very emotional, so I want to do something. And there are these life cycle events, and it's kind of cool to be like, but day to day, man, I got stuff going on. It's not, you know, we're just not relating to it like we do to everything else in our life.
There's so much disengagement in the Jewish community, and especially of my generation and the younger generations. And when I start wondering why, could it be it's because we're not showing them the bigger picture, because we're just giving them tastes and we're not saying like, this is really how rich it is. It's epic. It's a lot, but how cool. And like, take your time, but like, that's where you go. That's Ivy League. And like, if you want to make stops along the way, but like, just know it's Torah and like, that's it.
There's so much beneath this Torah surface. Like there's so much going on in Judaism that I had no idea was there. And intellectually, it's stimulating and expansive and awesome. But on the other hand, like emotionally, I'm not really sure how to process it. So where has this been the entire time? Who have I been then? Have I been asleep? Like, has everything been wrong so far? And all these new questions that are coming up, like, will they be answered? Are they the right questions? All this stuff about Torah, like, well, what is it really? And what does it mean if I never knew what it was? And I thought I was being I have a lot more questions.
The most basic lifestyle issues are Shabbat and Kashrut. We spend an entire day enjoying and recognizing the world that God created for us. That's what Shabbat is.
I wasn't raised keeping Shabbat. I thought people who kept Shabbat were crazy. And now I say, you know, even if I didn't believe in God, I would still keep Shabbat. To have a day that you unplug and be present, which is what, you know, being present is the greatest challenge for every human being, to live in the moment.
This world is starving to have at least one internet and cell phone free day, okay? We got it. Moses told us about it like 3,000 years ago. Thou shalt have at least one day of the week is without thine cell phone. It will be the Saturday.
What's very interesting is that people who observe Shabbat say, I don't know how other people do it if they don't have Shabbat. And yet, for those who don't have Shabbat, they say, I don't know how people who give up a whole day like that.
One of the biggest problems that secular Jews have is they've never met a religious Jew. They've never spent a Shabbat with a normal family that they see how beautiful it is.
Every Jew ought to have one real Shabbat, you know, with words of wisdom, with singing, with kosher food, with friends, staying up late. Have one. Every Jew ought to have at least one of those. And then we'll talk about intermarriage. Then we'll talk about intermarriage. But if you don't even know what you're missing, you don't know what you're missing.
As a Jew, is there an ultimate way to be? And if so, what happens if I don't want to eat like that?
Kosher laws are a series of laws in the Torah that were given to the Jewish people that dictate what we're allowed to eat, what we're not allowed to eat, because ultimately you are what you eat. And this is like the ultimate blueprint of staying safe spiritually, in a physical sense and in a spiritual sense.
When I travel now, so I tell you I love traveling, so I can't eat the local cuisine. What a bummer, man. You know, like you're in Zimbabwe, you want to see what they're eating, you want to taste it. And like, I'm like, you know, biting on my matzah.
Certain Jews won't travel to certain places just because they lack the convenience of kosher food.
So you miss out, but like not on what was yours, on what wasn't yours. And that can be hard, but that's okay.
Ultimately, kashrut is what is called the chok, which means it's a law that is beyond our comprehension. It's something that we're not ever going to fully comprehend. And that's what's almost special about it. It's like we're doing it with pure faith and like just trying to connect to God in a way that's beyond our comprehension.
You have to be in it. You have to be in a community. You have to have that experience in order to appreciate it.
I think that's my very point of most of the things. For people looking from the outside in, it's like, oh, that seems like too much. My mom likes to say too much on her.
These little crazy laws of, you can't use this plate and you can't use that fork and you can't eat there and you can't drink there. It has a huge effect on what created this closeness, this bond between us, because we're in this together, it's like no matter what, we know that we have this mutual understanding of these laws that are so close to our hearts.
I can work every day. On Shabbat, don't know. On Shabbat, I can go. Shabbat, I'm with my family. Going door to door. I'm not working that day.
Getting asked, oh, are you Shomer Shabbos? Oh, are you kosher? Are you like, and it's like, I don't like that either or question. Like, am I Shomer Shabbos? Am I kosher? 100% no. Am I shomering something? Yes. Like, what is that question about? And it feels like there's a bit of like judgment. And that's an internal thing. That's me fighting to be somebody. And that's work that I need to do personally, of like not needing to constantly please and be somewhere I feel like I need to be, but just honoring where I am. And I'm in process. And that's hard to say. I'm under construction. So like back up a step and let me figure it out.
Marriage that has the greatest chances of succeeding is a marriage whereby we share a mission, and our marriage isn't about us. It's about what we are going to bring to the world.
There's an idea in Judaism and Jewish spirituality that one of the main reasons we are supposed to get married is because it's the ultimate parallel for our relationship with the infinite. Relationship means that you have two people from a true, authentic place of their individual selves go ahead and choose towards one another.
Why do you want to be in a relationship? No, why do you want to be in a relationship? Why does that even really matter to you?
Who am I? What's my bigger purpose? Who I want to be in the world? Figure that out. And then hopefully find somebody to match that.
The problem usually in relationships and with dating is us. How ready do you have to be? How completely solid in life, how you envision your life, do you have to be before you start dating?
The more similar you are in terms of your values and vision and what you stand for in the world, the better it's going to be.
Date yourself. Not such a bad idea.
Yeah,
Dating yourself. It is fun, right? But a lot of people are afraid to be alone.
How similar should you both be in your observance of Judaism at the outset?
People are afraid to go like this and be very narrow about what they want. And it's actually the secret to getting what you want.
You can have control or you can have relationship. You cannot have both. Control and relationship are opposites.
Are children a part of your vision and your goal? And if child or children are a part of that goal, what does that look like? You want to keep Shabbat. Have you been keeping Shabbat? Do you value dressing modestly or covering your hair or, Jewish holidays?
I can always bring this back to like my sister who has found so many similarities with her husband, but they're of different, religions.
Well, are they really of different religions?
What do you mean?
Are they really of different beliefs?
Not really.
Exactly. Yes, of course, in Judaism, we believe that a person is a Jew if they have a Jewish soul, whatever that means. Good conversation for another time. If she's a Jew, that's a soul thing. But in practice, not doing much different than anybody else.
You can't find your soulmate outside of your soul family.
Why?
Because your soulmate is connected to your life mission. And your life mission is connected to your family. She disconnected herself from a level of potential. That is the truth of intermarriage.
How do we know that God didn't intend for interfaith? Of course he did, it's happening. So how do we think outside the box? How do we continue to tap into deeper and bigger levels of consciousness around this conversation? Because so far, all I'm feeling is still information resonating from fear and smallness. Like it still feels small. It still feels, well, because I believe in this, this is what it is. I'm still not feeling it from like a really generous place. I'm still not sure. It's becoming harder for me. I guess I'm just really like overwhelmed by the amount of information on how to connect and which ways to connect and the lack of actual connection that happens.
Identity is so complicated because on the one hand, it's something that we feel we have a right to choose somehow. At the same time, it is something that's determined by how the rest of the world looks at us and sees us.
I think I'm for sure scared of going back and not having made a change.
What's the risk you have of stepping into the truth with this film itself? Surely, if you're listening to all these teachers teaching this, you can be safe behind your sister's story. You could be the safe behind, I sit here and I facilitate all these wonderful speakers and we edit and tell a nice story. But you're sensitive enough that you must and should be affected by the information. You must have your thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
You must be saying, that speaks to me more, that speaks to me less, that's more or less productive.
Yeah.
Are you willing to put the result into the film?
And it wasn't that I was scared to share. I was terrified that I wouldn't have anything to share. That at the end of all of this, I was asking the wrong questions, or I didn't even know what questions I was asking. Like, what is this thing about anymore? Is it about interfaith marriage? Am I asking whether I want to be religiously Jewish? Am I asking if I believe in God? Things got so messy in my head. I don't know, even within my own family, let alone the world. How do I find my truth? How do I find myself?
Stop trying to fluff up the truth in order to make people feel good, because it hasn't really worked.
I think we're deeply, deeply afraid of losing ourselves.
Do what you're doing, because that's where you are. When the voice comes to you, that whisper comes to you, don't you dare bury it. Because that is the access to your true happiness. And the moment you bury it, you kill your heart. When you kill your heart, you kill your hope. When you kill your hope, you kill your future.
I was expecting this aha moment. Like, this is how I feel about intermarriage. This is how I feel about being Jewish. And it didn't come. And that was heavy. I stopped my entire life to do this thing. And here I was so far away from clarity. It felt like a joke. I just felt like messier than I did before this whole thing started. And the point of this was to get my stuff together. And everything was all over the place. Like, what am I doing? What am I doing? I'd heard how a lot of healing can happen when a person goes back to the place where they were born. And I felt like maybe that was the kind of medicine I needed right now. I'm a little nervous, honestly. I don't know what to expect coming back here, digging up all these old memories, asking all these new questions, and trying to find truth. So we'll start with my grandfather. He passed away. This is amazing. It has a date, April 6th, 1996. Isaac Bordeaux. Then we have my grandparents. Wow, May 22nd, 2000. Visiting my grandparents' graves was something else. It felt like alchemy, like this ancestral healing I needed to do from lifetimes of persecution and anxieties passed on at a cellular level. I just sat there thanking them for all that they did and all that they'd sacrificed to allow me to be where I am. Most of my childhood memories are here, and this is the synagogue my grandparents spent a lot of time in. I could feel my grandparents in the synagogue, their energies, and it made me think that maybe it's their strength that's keeping me strong and pushing forward on this crazy journey, even after all these existential crises. It's hard. My grandparents were always in service. They would always be giving just food and love and warmth. And when they passed away, so many stories came out in the community of just how amazing they were. It's crazy. We haven't had a reunion like this one in years. So profound, just sitting there as everyone talks around me, looking on, smiling, laughing, and realizing how deep our ties run and how connected we are, despite the time and space that separates us. We're all so different. We have different beliefs and daily rituals, but we all come from the same Torah observant matriarch and patriarch, and that goes back for generations. I felt so whole being back in Kiryat Bialik. Visiting my childhood home gave me these intense flashbacks. I remembered playing at the playground with Gal, hanging out in the park with our cousins on the swings, making up dances. Me and Uzi would like be outside in our little pool, you know, when the summers were hot and like this is so cold, the stones, so we'd like sleep on the ground because it would be so hot during the summer. It's cool. It's there's like imprints of memories here, and I know that it's such a big part of my past. Of course, seeing my dad's Eastern European side of the family was a whole other trip. They pulled out a book from before the Holocaust, and it just reminded me of all the intense history that's embedded in my DNA from what happened to my grandmother. I'm looking for this picture of my grandmother, and yeah, I can't believe this. I didn't even know she was like printed. I don't think any of us were prepared for the emotions that flowed through us. I think I forced us all to connect back in a way. And that's not easy. The past can be painful. It holds so much trauma, but also so much love. I'm realizing that for me, deep love and deep pain are two sides of the same coin. And maybe that's why I hesitated going back to Haifa. I knew that by coming here, I would have to face my pain and my deep love for my family and my tradition and myself. It's so vulnerable to love, this deeply at least. And it makes me feel so responsible to keep this whole beautiful thing alive. Maybe this was all just a part of a big setup to help me learn to really love myself, who I am, and where I come from, to embrace my story so that I can create from it moving forward. I feel like I broke some perception of myself and my relationship to Judaism and our family, and like I found this reconnectedness.
When a person has like a epiphany, the way to hold on to it is to make a firm commitment.
She was right. I had to make a commitment. And in that moment, it was surprisingly simple. I'm going to be more Jewish, as opposed to just slapping an empty label on myself. I am going to live the questions. I'm going to do this Shabbat and kosher thing. I'm going to live Torah. I've shifted some sort of perception in relationship to this tradition that feels meaningful to me, that doesn't feel like it's oppressive or that it's inauthentic. I think I know how I want to live my life. And I think for the last, last 5-6 years, אני חיה חיים יותר מחוברים ליהדות. And I want to attract a partner and a life that aligns with this new commitment. And it's weird because I haven't been doing that. I never did that before, but I want to now. The story of this very Torah story of, you know, God saying to Abraham, like, just leave, lech lecha. And to me, I was like really related to that of like, go. Now I'm sounding like a freaking rabbi.
I was just going to say that. Do you hear this? Part 2, American Birthright Part 2.
It's so
Becky becomes
annoying.
a rabbi.
I'm
Just wait. Just wait.
So crazy being back here after spending most of the year in a country that looks and feels so much different than LA. And it's not only that, I think like I feel so different. I used to feel like changing was admitting that I did something wrong in a bad way. But now I feel like changing is admitting that I'm willing to give up parts of me that are not serving me to upgrade. If the path that I'm on post-Israel is leading me in a better and more connected direction, connected to me, connected to other people, connected to source, then like that can't be bad. Or I guess we'll find out. Getting back to regular life was not normal. It was not easy. I felt so solid and like I'd just gone through this crazy metamorphosis. And then like, on the other hand, no one really understood it. Like my family hadn't had that. So I had all this excitement and I was a little nervous at how they were going to perceive me now that I was like taking on all of this Jewish observance. I remember pep talking myself in the car on the way to visiting Gaul that first time back, just kind of like reminding myself that it was okay if we disagreed.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
You feel different. You feel more like in the earth.
I'm a completely different person after this thing.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it was never really about you. You started that for me, but it was about me, and it caused me to realize that it's not about like controlling the outside. It's not about controlling you or like fixing you. You were bringing up an internal reaction in me that I needed to explore about myself.
I love that, you know, my relationship sparked this journey. And then it became so much more than that, just like you said, which I think was the point the whole time. Explore yourself, start these conversations. What are people thinking? What's the rest of the world thinking? What's going on in the rest of the world? You know, what does interfaith look like elsewhere? All the meaning and all of this spirituality behind it, I think you helped me see.
I love you. Love you so much. You're so special. I'm so lucky. I feel so lucky.
So am I. Was simply to ask so many questions and create such beautiful art and work.
Well, a sister that has someone like you to ask them to. I mean it. I couldn't have done this without you, babes. Truth be told, Jewy, Israeliness, it's all the same. It's just a label. The stuff inside the packaging is what's of utmost importance to me. Jewy, for me, means sparking the big questions, igniting conversation, and illuminating communal experiences, candle references mainly. All the while sharing my eternal flame with any human grappling with life's prompts. We're not all the same. I don't think we were meant to be here. What we can find to unite us is the human dignity to accept each other despite our differences. It is in the blending that we create this magical wholeness, and I am so honored to shine my light brighter than I could have ever imagined, realizing that I am Jewy enough. I'm Jewy in exactly the way I am meant to be. L'chaim.
You married?
Of course.
Keep on, keep on going. I feel it rolling down the ecstasy. Caught in a flame, release this name off of me. Key to the chamber, we hang our identity. Frost in the coals are not warming me no more. I fan the flames with the hands of a man so insane with that love and the hate. Till the fire dies, we'll be on dance. Investigate this masquerade, this hiding place, smiling faces behind cages. No more lessons learned before I start. But the other shaking, can't take another second. No self-resistance.
Okay. We're back live. And I think Becky is here with us. So I want to thank you.
Thank you.
Is quite an hour's journey to be with you, to hear your story. It's especially timely. You and I know that it took months to put this program together, and never could we have anticipated today being the 5th day of the War of Israel. And one of the things that this film, for me today, calmed me down. And I think that's an important legacy that this film will have. And as Becky said early on, Becky, if you can leave your, again, put your email in. Anybody who wants to bring this film to their community, Becky has been very interested to get exposure to her film. And I think that the lessons of this film is quite interesting. And so I'm going to now open up the conversation. I want to let you know the best way to do this and help me, since I'm doing a one-man band, running all of the different pieces to this. On the very bottom of your Zoom toolbar, there's a reactions button. If you have a question, raise your hand. You'll see the hand raise up there. I'll be able to easily see you. Then if you're finished with your question, lower your hand so I don't get confused that you have a follow-up question. So I want to open up. I have certain questions I want to ask you, but I'm going to let the audience weigh in first. Sammy, I saw your hand raised there. Is that a true hand raise, or you're just waving to me?
No, it's a true one.
All right, go ahead. You'll be first.
Well, first of all, I want to thank Becky for a wonderful film. It's a very interesting transformation. Okay. The other thing is I'm very happy to see my friend, Rabbi Steve Burke. Okay. So, very happy that you had the opportunity to meet him,
Yes.
to talk to him. But what your film brought back to me is the fact that part of our problem as Jews is the interfaith marriage, because neither of the partners are really rooted on their religion. So all of a sudden, they are not totally familiar with their own religion, and the children will not have the proper roots. They will not belong to the Jews. They will not belong to the other two Christians or whoever else the intermarriage is. So this is one of the.
Sammy, can I ask you to tell the audience who you are and what your background is so everyone can understand where you're coming from?
Okay. First of all, I'm a Holocaust survivor.
Keeping it short.
Yes, I'm a Holocaust survivor. I was in a labor camp with my parents and subjected to medical experiments. At the same time, I grew up the Orthodox way. Today, I am not really practicing because I'm alone, but I feel comfortable in the Orthodox synagogue, the Orthodox way, although I go to a Reform synagogue for different reasons, okay? But it's not the same. My heart is still the way I grew up. And I feel very strongly that we should marry our own people, and therefore we will be able to give them a real strong feeling, okay, for Judaism and for the state of Israel. As a Holocaust survivor, I speak, in schools, campuses, university, different organizations, but I have found, to my dismay, that a lot of Jewish students do not have a spiritual connection to the state of Israel. And this has to be, when we marry to our own people and to give them a real strong core. Thank you.
Okay, so I want to follow up. I don't know if you want to answer, Sammy, but let me throw, I don't know if it's kind of a rhetorical question, but Tamara Lindemann, who's put something in the text, sent you a question. Do you have the opportunity to interview other interfaith couples? If so, what did they discover? And how these couples celebrate their religion, spirituality, and how does the majority raise their children religiously and spiritually? And she also thanks you so much for bringing us along through this amazing journey that you had. The film was so well done and brings us so much for me and all the Jews to discuss and wrestle with as we all contemplate our own connection to Jewishness. So that's a question that you can answer.
It's beautiful. And thank you for that feedback. It's just so helpful to continue to refine the experience around the film. I didn't focus my work on sitting with other interfaith couples. I didn't want this to become this sort of dogmatic piece that says this is the way, because that's not the way that I create. I wanted to focus on a personal journey. And based on my personal journey, someone might in the audience see themselves and want to explore for themselves. I felt like that would be the most connective and inspiring. So I didn't highlight too many other couples or their experiences. But of course, in touring this film and speaking to it, I've met with many interfaith couples, and we had one over last night to talk about many of these things. I don't think that intermarriage is a death sentence for Judaism. I also do think that, as Sammy just mentioned, that it does set up the couple and their children and the future generations for more struggle. And again, if we're looking at pure numbers, which are not just numbers, we know, the numbers show sociologically that the likelihood of children of intermarriages, they lose their identity. It's diluted, it's watered down, and often, like you said, it is not just fully felt. And so my work is, okay, I'm not about stopping the interfaith. It's, though that is sometimes what happens. It's about engaging the couple now in having a strong connection to Israel, and having a strong connection to their Judaism, and having strong Jewish literacy. Because that's the future. That's, to me, that's the importance. People don't want to be, no one changed because they were judged. And I feel like there's a lot of judgment that can come to an interfaith couple and to just Jews in general across the world. How many Jews do we know that say, I'm a bad Jew, I don't do this, I'm a bad Jew? You're not a bad Jew, you're a Jew, you're human. We're all good, and we may have moments of bad, but we're on a journey. And so again, I'll repeat what I always think of: no one ever changed because they were judged. To create an inclusive space that's inspiring around a strong Jewish identity, to me, is the answer. And I say that often when I speak to interfaith couples, no matter what they're. Some of them have children who have become very Jewish as a result of sort of not having a really strong core foundation in their childhood. Some grew up with really strong Judaism and I sort of couldn't find their way and found it again later. I don't think there's one way to necessarily set up children for future success. But what I know will really do at least a foundational job is to have a strong identity as a parent. And studies show that the grandparents have an even deeper impact on their grandchildren. I know my grandmother, Zlichona Levracha, really built along a lot of my strong Jewish spirituality and identity. So that's just a little bit of my thinking. It's very complex and very layered. We could talk about it forever. But I see that Mark has his hand up, so I'll let you.
First of all, thank you very much for letting us see your wonderful movie. My parents, as Jeffrey knows, survived the Lodz ghetto, Auschwitz, and Buchenwald. I was born in Germany 2 years after the war, but I knew almost nothing about our background as a child. And only recently have I learned about this. I married the first time. I've been married twice. The first time I was married was to a Jewish woman, and it was much easier. The second time I married a wonderful woman who had never really experienced being with a Jew. My parents threatened to disown me. Their friends wouldn't invite us to weddings or mitzvahs, other experiences with the family. Now, I will tell you that I see your thoughts and your process as a wonderful learning experience for people. But the point I want to make is that when this happened in Israel, no one shed tears more than my wife. No one felt more of a allegiance to Israel than my wife and my children. Okay. And I think sometimes when we look at an interfaith marriage, the real key is how we react to that. Because when we react with hate and intolerance, what are we really teaching the future generations and a person like my wonderful wife?
Agreed.
Does that make sense? When she reads my books about the Lodz ghetto and she sees what my parents went through, she feels as much as we do, and maybe more. So all I'm saying is that while we're having this discussion, I think it's very, very important to realize that sometimes by our intolerance, we actually create more of a problem, because Judaism can spread as an ideal and as a hope for the world, not by shutting other people out.
I agree, Mark. And that's exactly what I was saying when I say that no one ever changed because they were judged. We are also creating allies in our relationships. And again, it's layered, but and there are many sort of choose your own adventure in whichever direction you take. There are complications and not, and there are spiritual ramification and not, and we can get into that, and we don't have to get into that. But I think what you're speaking into is extremely important. My intermarried friends, it's always such a thrill to see a partner that's invested and involved. And I think that's extremely important. There are moments in my sister's relationship where her husband is not as involved and invested as I'd like for him to be. And that's my sticking point. That's my sticking point almost more than whether he was Jewish or not, because there's also Jews who are not invested. I'm not happy about that either, right? So it's exactly what you're speaking to. It's to have compassion and an understanding of who we are, the context of who we are as a people, and it's in moments like these when something's happening in Israel that in partnership you need that support, and that's something I speak to when there's an potential intermarriage in front of me. Is like, what's going to happen when something happens in Israel? Have you talked about that with your partner? Will you be on the same page? Will you have support? Because we need that. So you're absolutely right, Mark. And you're lucky to have such a great partner.
And Mark won't blow his own horn, but he's a fantastic author who's written a trilogy of books called The Devil's Bookkeeper, which is right behind him.
Wow.
Move your head to the left a little, but the other way, and then we can see your book. And he's been a speaker and a presenter to our group many times. So thank you for your words. If Jackie is able to get on video, Coco video, Esther video, and Karen, if your video works, I'd love to have you. You know, it's hard for us to see black screens and really, so please put yourself on the screen. I see that I would love to ask a question of both Rose and Kathleen and Trisha and your husband there, because I know that you're not of faith, Jewish faith, and I'm so happy and honored that all of you choose to come to the program. So collectively, I would like to ask you this question. Why are you here? And what did you take away from the movie today? And you can just speak to your truth. Just raise your hand and I'll call on you because we can only have one person talk at a time. I see that you're interested. Trisha, go ahead.
I was trying to find the hand. Sorry.
You could do that.
Yeah. We're both Roman Catholic. I've recently done an interreligious dialogue MA and my dissertation, which is 50,000 words on the Holocaust. So we're building up our knowledge of Judaism and obviously for me, for different faiths. What I took away from this is really interesting, and I was going to put it on the chat there, is it was really inspiring. So thank you for that. And I think I would like to watch it again, mainly because it was a journey of somebody finding their faith, but being open to it. And as Roman Catholics, we're actually catechists, and we try and help the children and the adults in our church find their faith by themselves with our support. So we're walking alongside them, we're not instructing them. But it's very different because you had the chance to go to Israel, and it's much more involved around culture and religion, whereas for us it's not the culture, is it? It's more just trying to explore our faith and where we stand with a Trinitarian God. But I found that really inspiring, and I think I've taken so much away from it that will spill over into our Roman Catholic Catechism.
Yeah.
And Peter, I want to give you the opportunity to add your
I'm used to it, don't I? Yeah, Becky, thank you so much. There's so much in there. It may be a surprise how readily that translates into a Catholic and Christian context, because so much of your comments about Jews who aren't engaged, who aren't owning that's so true of so many people that we come across, and it doesn't take any effort to translate some of the thinking and messages that you got into our own catechesis as we try and journey with other people in our own faith on their faith journey. Like Trish says, watching it again would be really helpful, and it's just no effort. It's the same experience, even though they're different faith traditions. There is so much in a common experience there.
Okay.
I love hearing that. I'd love hearing that. I'd love for you to, feel free to please reach out to me. I'll send you the trailer, the screener again. And if I can be of service to the work that you do and maybe finding a way to program for you, it'd be a real pleasure. It's really wonderful to hear that.
And
thank you very much.
Okay, can you put the URL in chat so people, and I want to also let you know that this is recorded. It'll be streamed tomorrow. If you're interested in the chat comments, just email me. I'll put my email address in chat, and I'll be happy to share with you the text file. Coco, before I'm always letting you go, Rose, so just hold on for me. Coco, Coco's a new friend of mine. We meet for coffee every Tuesday morning to chat with a group of people. Wow. Coco is not Jewish, and please, Coco, what do you think? Coco also runs a movie club So she's very close to this world too.
Amazing.
Hello, nice meeting you all. I hope everyone hear me. All
Yep.
right. Oh, well, thank you very much, Becky. It was a wonderful movie, wonderful journey, and then we shared you've been through, and then congratulations your wedding and everything. You find your partner, your same belief. I'm not Jewish, of course, and then I'm South Korean who brought up in a very strong Buddhism belief. So based on that, so I always thinking the incarnation that we all once once I was Jewish, once I was been Muslim. So watching all those movies, and then I put myself into their position, and then I have shared the compassion, I think. So that's why somehow, I don't know how many times I was in Jewish when I was past lives. Somehow I'm very strongly connected, you guys. Most of my friends in New York and Philadelphia, they are Jewish. So that's why I strongly believe, and we are together. And even though I don't know much about it, I always know about your life because we all connected. And then that's why I'm here. And thank you so much for sharing. And thank you, Jeffrey, for inviting me to this wonderful event.
Of course. And Rose, you're always so patient with me, so go ahead.
You asked the reason we're here. I guess my reason was presence, and like you said, a relief to have something that is not about the conflict and is not about the Holocaust, to be with the same community, but also to have something a bit different.
Can you let us know where you're calling in from, where you're zooming in from, in a little bit?
I'm Maltese. Although I do have some Jewish blood, I'm an atheist, and my parents are very strict Catholics. And I want to thank you, Becky, because it wasn't just a journey for you. It also, I think, became a journey for us, because while watching the film, I could feel my thoughts were changing along with the progress of the film. And basically, I went through 3 stages. The first one was, in a way, it confirmed my atheism. And then I went from that to, as Peter said, seeing the similarities with conservative Christians. And I asked myself why. And there is a similarity there in the sense that even for conservative Christians, what is very precious to them and what they're used to is under threat. And the last feeling and the last thought that I had was empathy, because even though it's not for me, it helped to understand why your faith is such a big part of being Jewish. Because if you're repeatedly, I think even more than we were, and in some places we still are as Christians, it's definitely worse. If you're repeatedly under threat, it's a natural reaction to seek your roots and to seek what is familiar. So I think that's part of why it's so ingrained.
Wow.
So my last feeling, I think, was empathy, and also it made the welcome that you've all given me, it's more meaningful, because in a way I'm an outsider, but as Mark said, the empathy is there as well, and the grief that we're all feeling at what is going on and what has been done.
So I want to let everyone know that in Malta, Rose is a political activist. And you said something yesterday was so touching, so emotion evoking. So can you say about being a political activist in your own country and how it relates to the Holocaust?
Yes, I don't know whether you've heard of Daphne Caruana Galizia. She was a Maltese journalist. She was assassinated for exposing the corruption here. Malta is basically a kleptocracy. There's a lot of corruption, and if you're against the state, it helped me to understand. It's not that I didn't know about it or anything. I've been reading since I was very, very young. and movies and everything. But once you live it, it's different. And it taught me how it feels to be an outsider and under, you know, an outcast in a way in your own country, because you're against the state, and that you can't even trust your neighbors or your friends, and that we're discriminated against when it comes to hospital appointments, to jobs and stuff like that. And that really deepened my understanding of what was done to Jews. Because when you live something, it's different from, you know, just reading about it or listening to the stories of survivors. I'm not saying that I didn't empathize before, or, you know, that I didn't get, but it's a different level.
Thank you, Rosa.
Thank
and
you.
I wanted to go and ask Kathleen if you have anything to add. Kathleen is a huge proponent of coming to our events also. And tell us where you're coming from, where you're zooming in from, and a little bit about you. And go ahead.
Well, I'm from Altoona, Pennsylvania, and that's where I'm zooming in from. This started several years ago, back in 2016. You know, Elie Wiesel passed away. That kind of was like my awakening into the realm of the Holocaust. So what I find interesting about your film, Becky, is that the journey from kind of like rediscovering your roots as a Jew in the modern day world, and like what's going on around us. So being a Christian, like it's hard to relate to that, but in the end, like we're all brothers and sisters, no matter what the religion. So in a way, that's what kind of got out of your film there.
It's fantastic. I think this is such a special group, because like I said, the allyship is so important, and the empathy only comes, we're storytellers, we all are, to be able to share my story, to bring you into my experience, and we get to see that we really are so similar, and to just hear about your experiences, it's really, really so important. This is such a really special space, Jeffrey. Thank you.
Okay. And I want to ask Karen. I see Karen's has a book behind her, Letters from Bruno, which is something that I know a lot about. And Karen and I have talked. So Karen, maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your book. Maybe you have some comment for Becky.
Yeah, first, I would like to say to Becky, thank you so much for sharing this. I wrote in the comments, very courageous story, and also so beautifully honest story about your journey. I really appreciate that. And I actually, it's not a book, it's a film, Letters from Bruno. And I'm second generation. My mother was a Kindertransport Holocaust survivor who hid her past. And so I didn't find out that my mother was Jewish till I was in college. And there's a whole story behind that. And I don't want to get into that right now. I'm in Los Angeles, by the way.
Oh,
I know that's what I'm going to contact you, because I would absolutely love to meet with you and talk to you, because preparing and doing this film, and I'm an educator, not a filmmaker or a reluctant filmmaker, but it has put me on a journey similar to yours about trying to understand my Jewish identity. Because I didn't even know about it, and it's taken 45 years to put this story together. And so I've been, really searching and trying to figure out, similar to you, but different from you as well. And but I'm so moved by your beautiful film, and I'm really grateful also to you, Jeffrey, for bringing this event together. It's the first time I've met with this group, and it won't be the last. But thank you, Becky.
Thank you. And I also want to, Jackie, if you're available, I want you to get on screen so I can talk to you and to talk about what's coming up.
It's a incredible.
I can't believe you didn't have a question.
I do function differently for these last few days.
Okay.
Yeah. I am. Congratulations on the movie, but I am devastated and I'm frightened. And
Jackie is a child of the Holocaust who grew up in Tunisia. And Jackie works for the U.S. Shoah Foundation, interviewing.
Wow.
What is it? How do you, North Africa?
the MENA collection, Middle East
Middle
and
East.
North Africa.
Yeah, North survivors. So I understand, but hold on a minute. We're going to literally end the program, but I want to bring to you that our next event is scheduled, next film event. And by the way, you're part of the debut, and we had such a nice crowd. It was beyond the numbers that I would have expected for the very first event that we had. So it gave me confidence to right away book another event. And that event is scheduled for December 13th at the same time, 12 o'clock noon Eastern time, 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock in Pacific time, and you can check which time in your country it is. So save the date for the 13th. And I just happen to have Jackie, who is presenting her film, We Are the Tree of Life, which is a beautifully art film in its entirety during the event. And we hope to have some special guests along with Jackie who will be with us, who are quite well known. If Jackie can pull the strings for us, that would be fabulous. So I want to let you know that that's going to be the next event on December 13th. We're excited about bringing Jackie's We Are the Tree of Life. Jackie, do you have anything to add just briefly to?
Let me make an apology. I cannot even
no
talk. I'm talking to myself only, and it's I
Totally
have
fine.
I have been in Sderot, and
okay, no worries. So I'm gonna
yeah, I have been as a kid over there, and I cannot believe that everything we tried to do for so many years are bringing us where we are. I apologize, but
Okay.
maybe I should get out
No
from the
apologies.
video.
Thank you.
No.
We're with you. It's very real what's happening.
I want to thank you all for coming to the debut. I hope you'll come. I want to also tell you that on October 22nd, that's a Sunday, at 1 o'clock Eastern time, 10 o'clock Pacific time, we have our Into the Light 3.0 intergenerational, managing intergenerational trauma. It's the third in the series. It is by far the largest audience that we get. There could be 100 people in the audience, and it typically has been. So I invite you to make your reservation as soon as you can so that you can get a seat. And that's great. Thank you very much. This recording will be online literally by tomorrow on our YouTube channel. And if you're interested in the chat comments, just reach me at jeffgthebaker@gmail.com. Thank you again, Becky. It's been an honor to bring you to the group, to have you present your film. It was just emotionally beautiful, and it's so appropriate for the timing. Couldn't have been better.
I hope so. Be well, everyone.
Thank you so much, guys.
Be well.
Thank you so much.